What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Gaines for Girls podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate your support. You can check us out at OutKick.com, anywhere where you get your podcasts. Be sure to like and subscribe, share these episodes. Very excited for today's guest. I told my mom that I was interviewing this person, and she was jealous. She wanted to tell me that she had a poster of him hung up in her room, I think a magazine cover, when she was in her teens, her childhood. It is none other than Kirk Cameron. This is someone who I've been able to develop a pretty personal, friendly relationship with over these past 2 years or so. And he is amazing, of course, as a person, but what he is doing for this country, how he has taken a special affinity with improving the education and the culture as it pertains to our youth, God's most precious, the most vulnerable, the most impressionable, the most innocent. And whether it's what he's doing with Brave Books, he's got a new show out for children that we are going to talk about today. He also just released a new adult chapter book. It is called Born to be Brave. He's just doing so many amazing things. I would argue he's one of the most influential and pivotal culture shakers that we have in this country, really across the world today. So couldn't be more excited to talk to him. But before we get into that, got to tell you about XXXY Athletics. If you've watched this podcast, you've heard me talk about them before. If you follow me on social media, you've seen me post about it on my Instagram, on my X account. It is the only athletic apparel brand that stands up for fairness in women's sports. Really crazy stuff. But they're amazing. The quality of their clothes is amazing. Of course, they're cute. They've got graphic tees. They've got sweats. They've got sweat shorts. Really awesome stuff. You can check that out at xxxyathletics.com with the code RileyG20 for 20% off at checkout. There could not be a better time to invest in values-based apparel than right now amidst this culture war that we are in. And we are going to talk about this culture war and how it is shifting with my mother's heartthrob, Kirk Cameron. Well, Kirk, thank you for joining the Gaines for Girls podcast. We've gotten to know each other over the past, 2 years probably now. And you have been one of the faces at the forefront of this. One of the people who has pushed back the hardest with what I would argue. You have a lot to lose compared to other people. And so before we get into anything, I wanted to thank you, number one, for everything you've done for the movement, everything you've done for the country, everything you have done to restore godly, traditional, biblical values to this nation. You've got a new book that has just come out. It is called Born to be Brave. I got this book. And I was so honored when I read it because I had like a little shout out, a little mention in there. And so I just wanted to start off by asking you what inspired you to write this book, Born to be Brave, and how does it reflect your own personal journey from Hollywood star to now, again, faith leader and cultural warrior?
Well, thank you for all the titles. I'm not sure I'm deserving of all of them, but it's exciting to think about being alive right now. I think it was some famous president that said, "We are not cursed with being born in uninteresting times." This is it, baby. We've got an opportunity to really shake things up and do some great things for our children and for the next generations. Well, thank you for reading my book. Born to be Brave is the first book that I have written for adults. I've written a few for kids. And this one was really born out of wanting to share the recipe that has given me so much hope and courage and has shaped my character over the last 3 or 4 years. And I think it started during COVID when that hit. In California, we live here in the communist state of Cali. And our governor essentially put everybody under house arrest. We were stuck in our backyards, in our houses, 6 feet apart. We couldn't go to church. You couldn't go to school. You couldn't go to work. If you wanted some weed, you could go to the weed shop. If you wanted an abortion or go to a strip club, you could go there. But those were only for essential services, not stuff like going to church on Sunday at Easter and taking communion or having Thanksgiving dinner with your families. And so then there was the first 100 days of Biden's administration, and everybody was just sort of waiting to see all the stuff that he was going to unravel that Trump had done and implement for the next 100 days. And I thought, well, what's our 100-day plan? And so I started something called the American Campfire Revival from my backyard, making 100 consecutive campfires and praying, repenting publicly on Facebook Live, and then teaching through the founding principles of America, which are biblical principles. And during that whole time, I was just struck by the worldview that so many Christians have lost, which is that, guys, we're not fighting for victory. We're fighting from victory. These people are not the enemy. They're the opportunity. And that nobody in politics can make or break this country. The culture is up to us as the people to create, and a good government will simply provide air cover or an iron dome to keep the missiles from flying in and wrecking our world. But we've got to build the world for our kids through our families and through our marriages and through our communities and our churches. Government can't do that. That's called communism. So let's not go there. I mean, we can go there. And I think that other administrations want to go there. But for me, I was like, it's time to lean into the birthright of courage that God has given his followers. The enemies are not too big for us to overcome. Culture is not something to be afraid of. It's something for us to create. And so I want to share with people, biblical insights and true stories from people like you and other friends who are acting in courage out of love for God and love for people, and not just whining about the culture, but winning the culture. That's what Born to be Brave is all about.
I love that. I love that. And I think it's important you mention whining, because in thinking about my own personal experience, and again, using your book to really relate to me and what, caused me to take that initial leap of faith, my parents just always told me, you can complain about something all day long, but unless you're willing to do something about it, then you're merely just complaining, you're whining, and no one wants to be around someone who complains all the time. So there were several parts of your book that really spoke to me. But you mentioned this word, courage. I picture our founding fathers, and I would imagine they would not think it's courageous to say that men and women are different. I think maybe, 250 years ago, that's not what would have been defined necessarily as courage. And so certainly this word has maybe its implication hasn't really changed, but what it takes to be courageous has changed. And so what are some of these other people in your book that you mention, people who you describe as being courageous, and again, why that's important right now?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. Our founding fathers and founding mothers, even before them, the forefathers and foremothers, did truly courageous and heroic things. They stood for truth in the midst of religious tyranny and government political tyranny. And they risked their lives on a little boat and crossed the ocean, landing in a wilderness with, really having no support. And they built the greatest nation on earth. I mean, the soldiers on Normandy did courageous things against all odds when there seemed to be no hope. But for today, us to say that it's controversial and takes courage to say that men cannot have babies is insane. That's just crazy. That shows how far we have degraded in our basic knowledge of anything. I mean, I had this conversation with my dad and my mom the other night where it just seems silly that we have a Supreme Court justice who says she cannot define what a woman is. And, it was
because
fascinating.
She's not a biologist. Duh.
Yeah, she's not a biologist. But I'm like, well, that's actually why Matt Walsh was able to make an entire documentary called What is a Woman? And if you haven't seen Am I Racist? That's even more fantastic. And the truth is that when you eliminate God and his word from your knowledge, you become a fool. You really do. And I don't say that as some sort of a derogatory term. I think it is the right definition. You can't really define anything absolutely because everything has become just a human construct. It can shift and change. So while gay rights were once rooted to biological hardwiring of attraction to someone who is biologically the same sex as you are, and that was the basis for gay marriage, the transgender movement is now undermining the very foundation of that argument and saying that gender is now fluid. It's on a spectrum. It's not biologically hardwired into the person that I love. In fact, they can change and I can change. And so those two things can't coexist at the same time, and they're at odds with one another, but they're in the same alphabet army. So it's hard to fight against your own soldiers. But this is the lunacy that we have to deal with today. And I'm so grateful for people like you who are just standing for simple common sense truth. I'm thankful for Jonathan Isaacs, who refused to go along with all of the other basketball players when it came time to sing the national anthem, or raise the fist of power, or the Black Lives Matter square, or whatever. I've got buddies who are doing a better job than FEMA when it comes to disaster relief by getting men to stand up and volunteer, be men of courage, compassion, and character, and rush to disaster sites and voluntarily give their time, their energy, everything to rescue people out of their homes and, dig them out of the mud. I can think of other business owners who are changing the healthcare place and paradigm by offering something better than healthcare insurance. So when things are not working and they're not broken, it's usually the best time to offer positive alternatives. That's what you're doing. That's what my other friends are doing. That's what Brave Books is doing. When Scholastic is putting literal pornographic descriptions in books for kids in schools, to where if you read those pages at a school board meeting, they remove you for vulgarity. Yet they want their kids to be able to read them. And, it's like cognitive dissonance, it's schizophrenia, it's a conflict of interest, but they don't know how to fix it. Brave Books comes in and says, we'll offer you book fairs with wholesome, good, pro-God, pro-America values, and it can still benefit your school with a portion of the proceeds from the sales. And you don't have to be a whiner anymore. Join us and we'll create the book culture for our kids, and it'll build their character at the same time. So this is the kind of mindset I think that we need to keep encouraging out there for people who want to see a hopeful future.
No doubt about it. I love Brave Books. I've got tons of little cousins. They all subscribe to Brave Books. So if you haven't heard of Brave Books, which I'm sure you have, or if you haven't invested, and it truly is an investment. It's an investment in your children's future. If you have not invested into Brave Books, I encourage you to look at it. I've got a book with Brave Books. It is called Happy No Snakes Day. That is about standing up for the truth despite the consequences you may face. And so what a phenomenal way to counter, again, like you said, the grooming, for lack of a better word, that we see the culture putting into schools that kids are being taught. So really, really awesome stuff going on at Brave Books. And in congruence with that, something you have been incredibly effective at is communicating with the youth. And so you have just been a very busy person, because on top of your new chapter book, you just launched a new show, a children's show. It is called Adventures with Iggy and Mr. Kirk. It is amazing. It focuses on teaching timeless virtues to kids. What inspired you to create the show? And how do you hope that it impacts families and children?
Well, I'm really excited about this because the pollution that's coming to kids through Disney and Nickelodeon and some of their favorite cartoons and kids shows is just awful. It's as bad as it is in the books. So the trans movement, kids today are likely to come home with a book that is where they're learning morality from gay dinosaurs or trans ducks, not from Christians and people who love God and love their family and love this country. And so parents are just yearning for a time where TV can actually be a support to the things they're trying to teach them at home. Shows like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, that was a little before my time even, but Mr. Rogers was somebody that embodied a man who cared about the souls of children. He would listen to you and he would deal with difficult questions that kids are wrestling with. And so that's what we have created. Our version of a modernized Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, or think of Sesame Street, that is faith forward, that teaches kids to love God, to love their family, and warns them about the dangers of genderqueer theory that warns them about socialism and communism and teaches them the value of humility rather than pride, about teamwork and family and facing your fears, and standing up for the truth, like Riley Gaines. And it's all done in the context of Mr. Kirk, that's me, raising a 5-year-old iguana named Iggy, and he is a little green puppet. And we actually got one of the world's best puppeteers from Jim Henson's Sesame Street to make and operate the puppet, and he's absolutely adorable. And he has a relationship with this colorful cast of animals on Freedom Island, and we have finished 2 seasons, 20 episodes of adventures with Iggy and Mr. Kirk, and children and parents are just raving about it. We had our green carpet premiere. Iggy insisted that we change the red carpet to green. It's his favorite color. And it was awesome. So it's coming out this spring. It's going to be everywhere. We'll even give it away for free if we have to. And we're asking people who want to support this kind of children's television programming to go to watchbrave.com. And there's lots of ways to get previews of the show and ways to support the movement.
That's right. That's right. You've got characters in there like Culture the Vulture, which represents the challenges that kids face in today's world that you described. But I mean, how do you balance teaching these important lessons that kids need to be taught with keeping the content still fun and engaging?
Yeah, that's the beauty of this. And it's a dream team of people. The animation is beautiful, and you can see that in the books, but now we bring it all to life through movement animation. We've got stars from Disney's Good Luck Charlie, Lee Allen Baker, and we've got these world-class puppeteers. So it's fun, it's funny, it's entertaining. But you've got, I'm a grandpa now. My daughter just had a little baby girl, and my little 3-month-old Maya is going to be watching these things. And so I'm making sure that the lessons are solid, that they are true, lasting, that they're going to get to the heart and reach those kids where they really need to be nourished. So, for instance, when we dealt with the sanctity of life, we deal with the sanctity of all life and teach little Iggy, who has a bird's nest full of eggs, that he can't just throw the eggs away because there's something inside of them. There's little baby birds. And that mommy is caring for those little baby birds. And that we, just like those babies in the eggs, start out inside of our mother's womb, and God's knitting us together in there. And he learns to take care of all life, not just preborn life, but elderly life and disabled life in the episode of Adventures with Iggy and Mr. Kirk. And then dealing with gender identity, which is a really hard topic to deal with. Culture, the vulture, suggests to Iggy that because he's an iguana and Mr. Kirk is a human, and Mr. Kirk's family is human, that they don't love him quite as much the way he is, and he ought to consider becoming more like a likable human boy. And so he now tries to change his identity and his expression of who he is by dressing and acting like someone other than the iguana that he actually is. And this leads him down this identity crisis. And the vulture named Culture keeps trying to teach him how everyone's against him and to feel sorry for himself. And he just feeds this monster until Iggy finally breaks down. And it's the loving, wise advice of Mr. Kirk that leads him back to understanding that God made him special just the way he is, and that he's got a purpose for him, but he has to embrace his identity in order to discover that purpose and that treasured value. So these are the kinds of things that we do while everything is crazy and entertaining and fun for the kids.
Absolutely. Again, that is Adventures with Iggy and Mr. Kirk. I encourage everyone to check that out when it's dropped. I saw clips of the premiere and it looked amazing. But I mean, last thing for you. I mean, it seems like more people are willing to speak out, whether it's against the gender ideology movement, whatever the cultural chaos that plagues this nation might be, that at one point, I mean, really held people, and even still, it has held people hostage, for lack of a better word. You have people like, I think in Hollywood, your realm, you have people like, of course, yourself, Rob Schneider, people who are now bold and brave and unapologetic in stating the truth. You've got athletes who, people like John Jones, who we just saw. I mean, how amazing. He won this UFC title, UFC 309. The first thing he does, he says, look, I want to honor God, my Lord and Savior, because without him, I am nothing. I thought that was amazing. People, of course, like Harrison Butker, we're seeing this, I think, to really highlight how cancel culture has lost its grip. We're seeing people do this silly little Trump dance, which has taken over social media. It's being done by collegiate players, professional players, even female golfers, which is amazing. But I think it's more than just this embracement of Donald Trump. I think it's a rejection of absurdity, as we of a society, again, have been placed in a chokehold by. And so it just shows me that cancel culture is losing its grip. Do you feel like we're on the winning side of this and that our culture is shifting?
Absolutely, we're on the winning side of this. And I think in order to not be nervous about saying that we're on the winning side, we have to really rightly frame our optimism. And to rightly frame it, we have to recognize that, as I mentioned earlier, we're not fighting for victory. We're fighting from victory. And by that, I mean the ultimate victory of the gospel. When our founding fathers and mothers gave us this country, they didn't have delusions that their children would all follow the precepts and the guidelines of God found in the Bible and in the Constitution. They hoped that they would, but to the degree that we get away from that stuff, we will suffer and we can absolutely implode and disintegrate. But the kingdom of God goes on, and I don't know what's going to happen here in America. I'm very hopeful. And the next 4 years, I think, could be our finest hour as the family of faith and those who love God and love the country. But there is massive global shifts. The winds shift and change. And in South America and in Africa and in Asia and in the Middle East, there is revival and awakenings that are taking place underground and in unexpected places. And to the degree that we in America and Europe walk away from God, rip the 10 Commandments out of our legal system and prayer out of schools, we may see a terrible decline. But here's my theory. My theory is that God is a God of grace and second chances. And we see that kindness and mercy over and over in the scriptures and throughout history. What if the current cultural setback in America is really a divine setup for a cultural and spiritual comeback led by the family of faith? I firmly believe with all my heart that it is. And it's not going to happen because God's going to drop it out of the sky. His spirit works in your heart. And then you begin to heavenize your home, your community, your state. And from the local grassroots level, we begin to change everything from the inside out. And I think we're at the heart of the beginning of a new awakening in America.
I love it. I love it. If you want to hear more about America's spiritual and cultural comeback, you can check out, again, Kirk's new book. It is called Born to be Brave. If you want amazing resources and guidance and these wonderful virtuous lessons for your children, you can check out Brave Books at bravebooks.com. You can get my book, Happy No Snakes Day, but they have tons of amazing authors. It's a monthly subscription, again, in total contrast to what Scholastic is pushing for, putting in your children's school libraries. And furthermore, for your children, check out Adventures with Iggy and Mr. Kirk. Really, really great things that you're doing, that you have done, that you will continue to do. We will certainly be looking out at what is next for you, because I know you're not done. It is always thing after thing after thing. How can you restore traditional biblical values? And we appreciate you for it. You've got an amazing team of people around you. I got to spend some time with your sister also, by the way, a few months ago, and she's just as amazing. So what a wonderful family you guys have. But just couldn't be more grateful for everything you've done, for me personally, for the movement, for the country. So thank you, Kirk.
Well, thank you. I'm grateful for you, and I'm grateful for your parents and the guidance that they've given you over these years. And now you're passing that on to everybody who's listening to you week after week after week. So keep up the great work. Let's
Bring
go fight win.
All right, lots of action items for you. Make sure you check out Kirk Cameron's newly released book, Born to be Brave. Again, I read it It's amazing. I could not believe when I was reading it that I got a shout out in there. So again, Born to be Brave. If you have any children in your life, whether that's your own, other children that you know and that you love, check out bravebooks.com. Of course, you can sign up for the monthly subscription. They drop a new book off at your doorstep every single month, written by a different influencer, a different author who represents these values that they're teaching these children about in these books. Or you can buy a book one-off. You can check out my book, Happy No Snakes Day, at bravebooks.com. And I encourage you to check out Kirk Cameron's new children's show, Adventures with Mr. Kirk and Iggy. Wonderful things he's got going on over there. Everything he is doing for this culture, everything he is doing for the future of this nation, the future of the world, our children. Again, that is xxxyathletics.com. Use the code RileyG20 for 20% off at checkout, and we will see you guys again next week. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. The fight to save women's sports and restore common sense is far from over, and I continue the conversation every week. So make sure to catch more content over here and subscribe to OutKick so you don't miss a thing.